Now that we're done with exploring Vermilion City, all that's left is the gym, which we're not going to take care of quite yet. We're going to head back to the SS Aqua since today is Sunday, because today is the trip back to Olivine from Vermilion. So, let's go right through, and don't worry, I think you all know what I'm going to be talking about today, mostly because I already said something about it in a bulletin. But first, I want to talk about something that is more or less of a prologue to what I wanted to say. But today's subject of conversation is still going to remain very consistent. It's called Junichi Masuda is a Blabbermouth. Yes, the other day he caught the attention of millions of fans on Twitter by responding to someone who suggested to him that they should do a remake of Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. And Masuda said, thanks for the suggestion, I'll take that into consideration. I don't remember the exact wording, but that was about as close as you're gonna get. But no matter how he worded it, it didn't take much more than that to send the fan base into an absolute frenzy of, oh my god, he said the remakes are coming, and they're coming soon! But, you know, it's just a matter of people hearing what they want to hear. I've heard a lot of people say that the remakes were actually confirmed. That couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, the only reason why he actually talked is because work hasn't actually begun on such a project. Otherwise, had they started working on a remake, I can guarantee you that everybody on the Game Freak payroll, including Mr. Masuda himself, would have stayed mum about all this. And it shouldn't be a surprise for anyone, because as I said multiple times, now is not the time to remake these games while the main series are still on the DS. Who ever heard of a game company remaking a game one system later? That would be horrible marketing. So, yeah, at least he's aware of the possibility. And, you know, the really weird thing about how he worded it is that not only does it demonstrate that a remake wasn't in the cards for the short term, but the fact that he thanked the person for the suggestion and said he'd take that into consideration suggests that he might not have even thought of the idea. Compare that to the general opinion within the fan base that such a remake would be a formality, if not this generation, at least in the next one. But the way he worded it lets me believe that no, he really had no intention of remaking the games. And I can think of 3 reasons for that. First, Generation 3 games are still compatible with modern games. You can transfer any Pokemon you find there into your Generation 5 games by proxy of the Generation 4 game of your choice. But yeah, Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald are still compatible with the modern games, whereas Generations 1 and 2 were not. They ditched backwards compatibility with Generation 3, so remakes of Generation 1 and 2 would be fully justified in that light. Generation 3, a lot less. 2, the game hasn't changed too much since then. Most of the big changes happened between Generations 1 and 2, and between 2 and 3. But since Generation 3, the game hasn't changed that much. And I can't imagine the fact that Crunch is now physical would actually sell copies. It's like, oh my god, they're remaking Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, but that one's totally different, because Crunch is physical! Oh my god, I gotta buy this! No, I can't imagine that sort of thing happening. The game has been pretty stable since Generation 3, so at least wait another generation to implement the changes that were in that generation on top of everything that we've had in the last 2 gens. And 3, well, I can't imagine why anyone would want to revisit those 17 sea routes. Yeah, I just had to mention that because those goddamn sea routes, They just make the game a lot worse than it potentially could have been. And not to say it's a bad game, it's not the franchise destroyer that people thought it was when it first came out, but still, I understand that the theme is land versus sea, but having 17 land routes and 17 sea routes was a bucket of bullshit, if you ask me. But yeah, the fact that work hasn't begun on a remake, as well as the fact that apparently they were nowhere close to getting started on it, because apparently this is the first time Masuda ever heard of the idea for some reason, even though people have been asking it, you know, ever since Black and White came out, because it's a simple rule of two. If the current generation is Generation 5, you have to subtract 2, and you're going to have everyone's favorite generation at the time. Like, back in the last generation, everyone was saying, oh my god, Gold, Silver, Crystal were the best games, Johto was the best region, and stuff like that. And now it's all about Hoenn. But, yeah, I'm going off on a tangent once again. But, apparently, work wasn't even close to getting started on such a remake, which is the last nail in the coffin of such a remake happening in Generation 5. I mean, at this point in time, we might still be fairly early in this generation. We don't really know for sure, but what we do know, they're working on the deluxe version to Black and White. That we already know. They're probably already working on Generation 6, because I think it was Masuda himself who said that they started working on Black and White as soon as Diamond and Pearl came out. So if they wanted to get a Ruby Sapphire Emerald remake out in time for, you know, late in this generation, they either would have started on it right now, or they would be pretty close to getting started. Because look at this game! And by this game, I mean the one that I'm playing right now. I was talking in the last video about the amount of polish that it had. You know, I gave the example of how you couldn't hear the music much when you were listening to the engine, and the thing where Pupitar greeted that random bay leaf and stuff like that. Look at all the polish this game has, and tell me that they only started working on it once Platinum came out. I'm not going to have any of that. I am not going to believe you. So, yeah, and on top of that, there are rumors that they might be announcing the deluxe version of Black and White as early as December. Because I don't understand the full story. Apparently they're attending an event that they usually never attend, and by they I mean Game Freak, of course. And so I'm not really sure, but people are saying that there might be a reveal of the deluxe version as early as December, for maybe a release in June or July next year. And after that, we would dive into Generation 6 in time for late 2013, which would mean that Generation 5 would only be 3 years long instead of the usual 4. And this is supported by the fact that, well, for one, the anime is really going super fast. Ash already has 4 badges, whereas at this point in Generation 4 he only had 2. And there's also the fact that, well, the whole hardware situation, they might want to get out, they might want to get the deluxe version out a bit earlier, while the DS is still somewhat relevant, because we just know that it's going to be buried by the 3DS more and more as the months pass. So they might want to get that out of the way right now, give the DS a proper swan song, and after that move right along to Generation 6 in late 2013. And speaking of the deluxe version, and coming back to Masuda for a bit, yesterday he may have thrown around the first few hints at what we might expect from said deluxe version. He gave a few details about the character formerly known as N, and probably that we're going to be talking about as N in the future, both because that's how he's been introduced to us first, and second, because it's a lot less dorky sounding than his real name. Yeah, believe that. N actually sounds better than his actual name, which is Natural Harmonia Gropius. And no, I'm not making that. This isn't a crackpot theory. This is what Masuda said, and therefore it is law. Natural Harmonia Gropius. I'm sure it sounds really cool in Japanese and all, but it just sounds dorky in English. By the way, I just took a nap in that bed, and that's the trigger point on anything after your first trip on the SS Aqua for the boat to dock at your destination. But back to N for a second. Masuda said that it was rumored that he was born from Pokémon, and the fact that he says it's a rumor made me very important because everything else he said about it, it's not a rumor, it's a fact. Anyway, this thing about being born from Pokémon led people to, think that it may make sense because he's seen with a Zorua in the intro, and we see Zorua and Zoroark impersonate humans in the game. But then again, they don't have any lines when they look like humans either. So, yeah, if N was actually the offspring of, say, those species, it would give a Zorua or a Zoroark, not a human. It's hard to explain, but I think that the fact that if he really is born from Pokémon, which there's no real way to know right now, I don't think it has anything to do with Zorua and Zoroark, because when they look like humans, they're illusions. They're not really humans. They don't even transform into humans either. It's just an illusion. But either way, the fact that these rumors even exist prove one thing, that N is Getsis' adopted son, not his biological son, which I think, and you feel free to disagree on this, but I think it brings Getsis' evil factor down by a notch or two, because if he was his biological son, he would be all like, how can you do this to your own flesh and blood? Whereas, adopted son, he's, it's not really that bad, but the way Masuda talks about N, it makes it sound like N is supposed to be like the chosen one. So how did Getsis find out about that? Either he was just really, really lucky to get some random kid into his schemes, and it just turned out to be the chosen one, which I really doubt, or Getsis already knew this all along. So how did he know that? That is a possible plot point that could be used in the deluxe version, as many other possibilities that arise if you just stop and analyze what's been said about N yesterday. So yeah, even before yesterday, I think we could have expected the relationship between N and Getsis to be a little more fleshed out than in Black and White, but with what we learned yesterday, I think there's really a lot to look forward to, and it seems like they're really kicking it up another notch. Like, we were all impressed when Black and White came out because of having, a bit more emphasis on the story, even though I still believe that story isn't essential to a good game, but still, they really took it up a notch in Black and White, especially with the surprise ending. So it seems like they're ready to go even further with the deluxe version, which is one of the many reasons why I'm really, really, really looking forward to it. Oh, and someone at the TSG forums suggested that maybe they could give Anthea and Concordia a minor role instead of, being throwaway characters in Black and White. You see them once in the intro, and then you meet them in N's castle, and one of them heals you. But, yeah, otherwise they really don't seem to do much, so maybe they could have a bigger role as well. I don't know. There are just so many possibilities, so many ways they could take all this, and I, for one, am really, really looking forward to it. Now, I had a few more things to say about the deluxe version, but it has nothing to do with yesterday's reveal. I had intended on talking about it before anyway, but we're just about out of time, so we're going to stop here for today. There's only this one student over there that's left to fight, and after that, we're going to make our way back to Vermilion. So, I'll be seeing you then!